Hey, and welcome to Trash Pickins, where we pick apart the most disgusting, trashy holiday movies ever. But the thing is, we actually really love them. I was trying to do the we actually really love them. All right, let me try that again. We love trash, and we hope that you do too. So, it's almost December 1st. And what does that mean? Time to turn on the holiday movies. And not just any holiday movies, trashy holiday movies, which is pretty much anything on Hallmark and now a whole bunch on Netflix. It's time for us to get into our cozy PJs, pull on our electric blankets, and dive into some trash. Welcome to Trash Pickins, where we pull apart everything that is awesome and wrong with holiday movies. I'm Lisa.
I'm Sarah Lynn.
And I'm Frank.
And we are here to make some trash. It's really hard to do an intro.
We're trash picking.
Yeah, we're here to pick trash. We're here to dumpster dive for all those holiday goodies.
We're here to dumpster dive. We're here to dumpster dive for all the holiday goodies that are packed into those Christmas movies that we love to hate. So here we are today to pull apart Hot Frosty. It has been #1 on Netflix the first week that it was out, and now it's time to figure out what the heck is happening. Why is everyone obsessed with it? And how is it that these tropes just go on and on and on and on? Every film just builds upon them and makes them worse/better as we go. So we decided to put together Trash Pickins because the three of us get together and just love to pick apart all kinds of media, like everything. But to be quite honest, the media that we love to pick apart the most is trashy reality television, and also just movies that are made with like a low budget, not great writing. It's just so fun to figure out the tropes.
I feel like that the idea of watching something because you hate it, so to speak, and it's not like we want, like, okay, there's a certain style where you can watch things and you're like,
I want to see these people fail.
You're like rooting for failure, like, you know, people talk about lol cows, and it's not quite like that. I think it's like we have a reverence for it. There's some part of us that wants it to be cheesy, and we want to be able to roll our eyes at it, and we kind of enjoy it, and it's not always out of rage.
Sometimes it is, though.
But I feel like there's like a nuance there, right?
Yeah, 100%. We used to have all these conversations between the three of us, and so we decided we would take it to the big time and share our thoughts with you and see if you have other things to add to the conversation as well.
Well, actually, I thought of this earlier. I thought it might be good to talk about kind of like why the three of us and what our interest in this is. My interest, I think, in the trashy movies comes kind of from like the creative angle, because I have a background in film and art, and it definitely started from being like, I'm a pretentious art kid, and I am better than all these other filmmakers, and I want to make fun of it. So like, I think the pretentiousness, like, it's not really my motivation anymore, but that's still kind of like why it was fun, at least for me in the first place. And then also, I think like I have a Christmas business where I sell Christmas ornaments, so I feel like I'm very up on holiday season stuff a lot. So that's my interest. From Lisa's angle, she's our academic, the smarty pants, the PhD in communication. So for you, I think that you enjoy media literacy, you like analyzing things. So I feel like this kind of falls into that.
I think part of the reason why I enjoy picking apart these movies so much is because it really reflects like some of the broader trends and themes in our culture. And I think like sort of social commentary is one of my favorite pastimes. And it's just sort of, you know, like a fascinating snapshot of where we are culturally.
And then for Frank, I mean, I don't know, Frank, maybe you might have to define this a little more, but I kind of feel like from my perspective, you're like the poor soul that got roped into this. And that like Lisa and I watch these a lot, and she's like,
Okay, you're watching it with us.
And you're like, all right, I don't know. Do you have like your own relationship with Christmas movies?
No, that's it. I think I represent all of the significant others that get pulled into watching all the trashy movies. I'm here on behalf of all the significant others that have to watch these movies with their partners. And, you know, now I'm going to talk about it.
Oh wait, can I just say one other random thing before we like go into it more? I wanted to say that many people throughout the years have said Lisa and I, our voices sound really similar. So if anybody's listening to this and they can't tell us apart, like, I'm sorry, you'll have to deal with it. I don't know if that's actually true, but we get told that, and I just feel like I wanted to make mention of that.
We can't help it.
I was like, every time I listen to a podcast and they have like 2 people on it that sound the same, I'm like,
Why did they get someone with a more unique personality?
I'm like, oh no, we're doing that now. But whatever.
It's very similar, but it does sound different enough that I think it's the microphones, because in person you sound very similar.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is that, just to provide a little bit of a disclaimer, we're going to be basically tearing apart these films, but we love them. We do it from a place of love, and it's totally fine to sort of be critical about the things that you care about. And so all of this is just meant for fun and entertainment, but we really respect all the time and energy and effort that went into these films. We're just sort of adding a nice little critical lens to it, make it a little bit more interesting. The other thing that I think is so important for us to talk about before we get rolling is the fact that, this whole podcast, this whole concept really came out of something that we've been doing together as a family, which is our holiday movie bingo. So basically, we used to obsessively watch these trashy holiday films for years. Then all of a sudden we started saying, well, wouldn't it be funny if we had a bingo card? So every time we saw one of these ridiculous tropes happening, we could sort of, cross it off, So we put our heads together, collected a bunch of tropes, and we now want you to play along with us. We're going to be playing along. The idea behind the bingo card is each movie you see, cross off something, and then you have a different version for everyone in your family. See who gets a full bingo card first this holiday season. And it's a great way for us to sort of focus in on some of the more interesting, funny, and problematic tropes that we see in these films.
And also, we're doing now, whoever gets bingo at the end of the season gets like a super cheesy Christmas ornament. And it very much has to play into the cheesiness of Christmas. So I guess you can do whatever you want with your family, but that's what we do, so.
You can do first vertical, horizontal, diagonal, 4 corners, or all around the outside, or full card. You can decide however you want to play. I think we're going to be doing the full, well, I don't know, we can't do the full card because we're all going to be watching.
We could definitely do the full card. Like, I wrote all the tropes in this first film and there was already 8. Like, I would have gotten 8 points on the on the board. So like, you can very quickly fill it. But I think because we're doing one spot per movie, just because some of these movies have so many in them, it would be cheating, right? So
yes, and here's another layer of rule that I think we need to include. So the rule basically is, you could pick any one of these, like Sarah's saying, but like, I think that you need to pick the one that is most emblematic for this movie, right?
Yes.
Because that's where it gets interesting. Otherwise, you're going to have a collaborative cooking scene in every movie.
It's like, yeah, you have to find the one that is like the essence of the movie. And so actually for the Hot Frosty, I came down to 2 that I feel like were the essence of the movie. So like when we actually get to that point, I can tell you my rationale and you guys can help me pick which one is the essence of Hot Frosty.
Okay, so shall we dive into Hot Frosty?
Let's get picking.
For, I guess, anyone watching, we're like assuming that you've seen it, but if you haven't, there's going to be spoilers. That's how this goes. So just like overall, I before we like jump into the actual story, I wanted to give like my log line for it. But I felt like after watching it, I was like, wow, I feel like I've seen this film 1,000 times before. Not just because it's like every Christmas film, but I thought the best way to describe it was Edward Scissorhands meets Pinocchio. Because if you think about it, like the whole point is having like some childlike man that like all of the cougars in the town love. Like, that's Edward Scissorhands. Like, I know in the end Edward Scissorhands is like a sad story, but like ignoring that part. And then Pinocchio was like, I want to be a real boy. And apparently like the whole time Frosty wanted to be a human. Like, we didn't know that until the last scene. But anyway, to me, I was like, it's those 2 stories mixed together about Frosty the Snowman for some reason.
I agree. And you know what though? Like, as an aside, I really think that this movie would have been better if like he just melted.
Oh my god, me too! I like, at the beginning, I was like, I paused it and I like wrote what I wanted and I was like, I really hope he melts. Like, I was hoping it was gonna be like the animated Snowman film that we liked as kids. And I was like, cause he's such like a baby. How could she fall in love with a baby? Like, he doesn't know anything. Like, it's gonna be creepy if she falls in love with him. Like, I hope he just melts and it's more about like teaching her to open up again. I was like, please don't fall in love.
Right, exactly.
Now I'm curious, how many Christmas movies end with a character death?
But But it's not. But he wasn't real in the first place, right? He's magic. He just appears and he gives her this like sense of how to love again. That's it. That's all we need to see. Like
Something. I don't know. He just fixes her house.
because now moving forward, she's gonna have to teach him as if he's a child and also apparently sleep with him. Like that's the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. I mean, it's awful.
Hey, as long as he can watch it on TV first, he'll be fine.
That's true. Yeah, she shows him like Hub eventually. And he's like, oh, what's this? I have a carrot. Like, you know.
The parody of Hot Frosty is already on.
Yeah, maybe there is one already made. I don't know.
I feel like we should actually do like a little rewind on like what is this film like actually about? Like just brief synopsis.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dive into Hot Frosty. So we picked Hot Frosty because it is a top movie on Netflix the first week it came out. So we decided to dive into because it had so many elements of what we love / hate best in these movies. So as a super brief overview, it's the story of a sad, broken woman because she's lost her husband to cancer. Then there's a magical event. She gets a weird old red scarf and puts it on a snowman, but that magic scarf turns him into a real boy. And he comes to life. He's a big goofball, and suffice to say, he teaches her how to love again.
To translate it for millennials, this movie is Gretchen from Mean Girls grows up and falls in love from Ted from Schitt's Creek. Because the entire time I was like, this is just Gretchen and Ted, like whatever. That's what happens when you see them in your first movie, but that's what it is.
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting because I feel like this film had a lot of different actors that were pretty well known actually for a holiday movie, which shows just how lucrative this whole business is becoming. And I mean, Netflix is trying to churn out stuff all the time anyway, but I was pretty surprised.
I feel like it's kind of a thing now to be like,
Oh, trashy holiday movies. It's so funny. Let's actually get bigger actors to do this now because it's self-aware. Like,
to me, that doesn't redeem it. But they tried to be very self-aware of the cheesiness.
I wanted to mention a couple of, like, a little bit more on the actors because I thought it was pretty cool. Like, we're saying they've had a lot more experience. So Hot Frosty is Jack Snowman. His name is Dustin Milligan. He's actually Canadian actor. He's been in a lot. Schitt's Creek, as Sarah mentioned. But he was also in 90210 and then X Company, which I'm not really familiar with. There's some other parts as well. Kathy Barrett, who's Lacey Chabert. Am I pronouncing her last name properly? She's like, was a child star. Apparently, she was on All My Children. She had a role as like a child of one of the main characters. She was in Party of Five, Mean Girls, Dirty Deeds, Black Christmas, All I Want for Christmas, and she's been in over 30 Hallmark films. So I think she should get the like holiday movie, like sort of gold star. She's like royalty.
Yeah, she's like a really good actress too. I mean, as cheesy as the scripts are and everything, I'm like, I enjoyed watching her.
Yeah, no, there was definitely moments where I was like, oh wow, like this is good acting. That's sort of poking through this ridiculous script. Like, and then of course we had the Sheriff Nathaniel Hunter, Craig Robinson, who's known for his role in The Office as Daryl. So also Hot Tub Time Machine. Killing It, This Is the End, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And actually his deputy sheriff, his name is Ed Schatz in the film. His name is Joe Lo Trulio, but he actually was on Reno 911, Brooklyn Nine-Nine as well, Superbad, Wet Hot American Summer. So these are all pretty big names. And it's kind of interesting to see that sort of comedy element now make its way into these films, because before it was mainly like be actors, trying to make a name for themselves, and now it's like this sort of interesting sought after path for some of these comedic actors to come into. So kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us now go into the scene by scene, because this is where we start to have some fun. This is where we can start playing bingo. So listen for the tropes that you want to get. Yeah.
Let's get picking. All right. So I have like brief, one lines, scene by scene, so it's not gonna go like super in depth, but it will give you just enough to be like,
Okay, this is what's going on.
okay, so the movie starts with some magical narration.
I think this was sort of like a very obvious nod to the animated Frosty the Snowman.
Oh, I haven't seen that in a long time. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think the hat was there. I don't know, whatever. I didn't like it. I remember my screenwriting teacher to be like,
Never use narration.
and he would like throw out any script that had narration in it. First scene, we have a quick introduction of the grumpy, unenthusiastic female protagonist, Kathy, sitting on her two mattress bed. I don't know if there was 2 mattresses or if it was just like a giant mattress, but it was like really tall and that caught my attention. It's not important to the plot at all, but like it stuck out. And then also I said her wallpaper looked like fallopian tubes. So she runs on the staircase, past the wall full of a bunch of framed royalty-free Art Nouveau pictures. I like actually looked them up because like they were so bright and prominent on the wall that I was like,
What is this? Like, what is this saying about her character? And
they all just, at least the ones I found, were like royalty free. There's like a brief kind of montage to show that her entire house is in disrepair. Like one of the steps is broken. There's like a leak coming from her ceiling. Her heater doesn't work, whatever. And I said, we can only assume that this is a metaphor for her love life in her internal emotional world. And then we are quickly shown a photo of her and a man. And so I have some beef with this photograph. Okay, so at this point when they zoom into like her and her husband, we're assuming, I'm like, oh great, this is the trope. Like this is one of the main tropes, is that like the protagonist, whether it's male or female, their spouse has died and then they can't get over it, right? We know that from every Christmas film. But the thing that I'm pretty sure this movie missed out on, if they really wanted to fit into the tropes, is that like the spouse has to die on Christmas. And then the main character hates Christmas because they have this memory of their spouse dying. So like when I saw that, I was like,
Yes, the dead spouse. Like, he died on Christmas for some reason, and now Kathy hates Christmas, and she's never gonna...
but like later on they just reveal he's died from cancer. And as far as I know, it wasn't on Christmas. And I was like, they totally missed an opportunity for that.
Yeah, it's true. You know, it's interesting because I feel like this whole film doesn't need, it's not Christmas dependent in the same way we see other Christmas films. And it just so happens that like the arc follows as like with the like build up to Christmas, but there's no real connection to Christmas in the same way.
So the next scene, she goes to work. We find out that she works at a diner, that she is, I guess, started herself, which again, trope alert, like having a small town diner, like having like a small town anything, whatever, is like huge trope.
At least it's not a bakery.
And so then we see Kathy interacting with all the people in the town, and all the town loves her. She's whatever. She's great. She gives free food.
She's like mommy. Like she's the town mommy. She's like, oh, this man out in the cold. Oh, come in for soup. Oh, no. She takes care of everyone, but she doesn't take care of herself.
So the next scene, she's going to visit, I think it's a thrift store. So she goes in and she like gives them free food because Kathy's so wonderful. Like you said, she's a mommy. And Mel, who is supposed to be older, it takes on the shaman/wise old mentor archetype. And I don't know, I have no clue why Mel is magical. Like, but she's like,
Oh, here, Kathy, like, you're so sad, you should be happy, and let me give you this stupid, ugly scarf with no design on it.
it's just like a red scarf. I was like, come on. It's like clearly the magical item. Again, another trope.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
I had 2 thoughts during this scene. One was I was pretty sure that Mel was going to end up being like Mrs. Claus and then ultimately be Santa Claus.
Oh!
Or there was going to be a twist ending where her husband was previously a snowman because of the scarf too.
Oh, that would have been so good. Damn, you just made this like 10 times better. How did they miss that? 2 snowmen. That would have been so good. She's like the weird like pimp that like gives snowmen to women.
Okay, so this is the quote again. You know,
Good things come for you when you're out in the cold, Kathy.
that's what Mel says.
You never find the warmth until you venture out into the cold.
Okay, but she lives in the cold. She's been living in the cold. Like, I feel like the metaphor doesn't work.
If you were to try to apply that quote to just life in general, like the cold is the metaphor for just the harshness of life, like how things can be bad. So like if you apply it to Kathy, she's saying like you have to go into the cold, the darkness, the sad. Kathy's been depressed for 2 years. Like she's been living in the cold. She like her heater literally doesn't work. So like according to Mel, like isn't she already doing that? Like what is the difference between a broken boiler and standing next to a snowman? Like how can you tell the difference between those two types of cold?
So that the scarf is like the only thing that anyone in the town does for her. Like we see her doing stuff for them through the whole movie, and the scarf is the only thing that the townsfolk give back to her, which is insane considering that she lives in like an igloo and it's freezing, and somebody gives her a scarf 2 years after her husband died.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I guess I just wish though that like even if they were going to keep it one color, it would have like a unique knit or something. Like it's the sort of thing that if this movie went viral, like you want people to cosplay Frosty and like they have to have a cool, like who wants to wear just like a red scarf that's plain? Like make it like kind of cool, like make it have like interesting fringe. I don't know. Something.
I mean, the only thing I was thinking is I think it's kind of reminiscent of like some like scarf that like someone's granny knit, and as they're knitting it, they're just like putting magic into it with like each little like whatever it is, because it looked really handmade and it needed to double as a fig leaf.
I think we were supposed to acknowledge that the scarf was there without really focusing on it, because he had to wear it all the time, right? So he's wearing it as a belt, he's wearing it as a scarf, and if it was like glittery and golden and sparkly or something, it wouldn't have gone with anything else he had to wear or not wear, and it would have been very distracting in every scene. So my guess is they toned it down just to kind of make it like, yeah, it's still there, but pay attention to everything else that's very important. Does Mel say where the scarf came from? She just said she had it the night that she met her husband, right? So it's just like, she said she had it when she found her husband. That's why I thought her husband was a snowman.
Maybe he is another Frosty.
That's what I like really wanted that to be the big reveal.
Yeah, because maybe he can't procreate, and so this is the equivalent of him like having a child is just passing the scarf on to somebody else.
Next year, Hot Frosty 2, it'll be her daughter or something getting the scarf.
Next scene, let's see. So she gets her magical scarf. She's like,
Thank you.
she goes outside, I guess presumably on her way home. She's walking through town and we see that the town had, I guess, some sort of snowman sculpting festival. I think they said at some point. So it was like a lot of different snowmen everywhere. So she finds, like Lisa said, a snowman that's like an Adonis that has a very prominent nipples that like stuck out to me. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But I was like, why? I don't know. Maybe it was the lighting.
The nipples, for sure, right? This was like a callback to the Batman suit that first had nipples on it and the controversy that all started. And it was just, who put the nipples on?
Yes.
So she's like looking at all the snowmen and they all have scarves except the nipple snowman. So she gives the scarf that Mel just gave her to the snowman because she's like,
This is a meaningless scarf.
and this is like classic writing here, you know, where the idea is like the protagonist is supposed to be rejecting their destiny, you know, they don't want like they don't actually want to go on their journey, but little does she know she's actually embracing it, right? So after that she leaves and then we see the snowman comes to life and we see a naked Ted or Frosty, and it's supposed to be super funny. He's naked because they play, as Netflix wrote in their subtitles, EDM Tchaikovsky music plays as Frosty comes to life, which I was just like so that was good. And then I said, somehow, just like Adam and Eve, Frosty gains humility and realizes that he shouldn't be naked in public, so he breaks into a clothing store and steals some clothes. And on his way from doing that, he sees like a bunch of boomers on the side of the road that are really scared of dongs, and they like faint and fall over, and it's supposed to be really funny, I guess.
Okay. There was a lot in that scene that I was just like, what the heck is going on, right? Who sculpted Frosty, right? Through the intro, you see like all these people working on all the other snowmen, but not Frosty, right? And how far down did they sculpt it? Because it looks like it gets like dangerously close to, somebody may have put a little bulge on there, I don't know, right? So then he comes to life and sneezes, right? That's the next Frosty callback. That was from the Frosty the Snowman cartoon, Frosty sneezes. And so there's two people walking by, the old folks. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, we find out later, and they're out walking the dog when Frosty is out there flashing them, right? And this is where we first meet the first thirsty lady of Hope Springs, who sees this naked man and decides to go and watch. Like, we need to go check it out, right? And we find out later the description she gives them is not of his face, which is just, it's a trend in this movie. There's a lot of thirsty ladies in Hope Springs.
Yeah. The other thing that like I've wanted to mention too is that there is a wish element that's tied into this whole ritual. So when she puts the like scarf on him and she takes a picture, somehow the electronic flash of the camera is what makes it happen, because the sparkle in his eye appears as soon as she does that.
I just rejected that because it was so dumb. I just wiped it from my memory.
So the scarf didn't mean anything. Was it the scarf or was it the picture?
I think it's a combination. She's like a modern day witch, like she's making her spells woven into the scarf, flash of a camera instead of like the toe of a newt or whatever. Like, I feel like something more along the lines of like, to go back to your Pinocchio story, when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. It's at least like aspirational and imagining and like drawing them into something, not like literally go stand next to an icy man and get cold when he touches you with his ice hands. Like, it's...
Yeah, we never get the impression that she's like actively looking for somebody. She's not like dating for 2 years. I mean, she rejects love and the idea of being in love throughout the movie until the end. So it's not like she was wishing for it. I think she was just like, I was a little pissed that she gave the scarf away. Like, the one thing somebody gives her, and she's like, I'm gonna put it on this snowman and leave. I'm still not entirely convinced that this scarf is what brings him to life now. Because is it? We're led to think that is because of the hat and Frosty the Snowman. But I don't really know. It's just like a thing that we assume.
Well, it actually would have been a perfect setup for later if somebody like takes his scarf away and he just like falls to the ground in a puddle.
I thought that was going to happen.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like he just freeze or something.
Yeah.
Also, while we're talking about his big transformation, what the heck is he, right? Frosty the Snowman was a snowman. He was snow. You could see it. This guy is not flesh. He's still cold, but he's not snow, but he's melting. It's some kind of like hybrid flesh snow creature.
Is a demon.
It's a vampire, maybe? I don't really know what he is, and it freaks me out a little.
It's true. What would he look like if he melted? Would he just be like guts? Or like they had a big puddle of water when he was melting, but like what would happen if he completely melted? Would there be any human elements left?
There's no budget for that, right? That's how you can tell the budget on this film.
Yeah, they saved the CGI for that scene,
Okay, so another thing about him coming to life, like I love like the selective human traits that he has, right? So of course he looks like a human, but he doesn't behave like one, his physiology's off, but he also somehow can like immediately speak English. That's like his chosen language. He can stumble around, but he doesn't know what glass is, or that he could hurt himself, or what food is, or like that he should wear clothes. It's just like all these random things. Like I just loved that fact that he was able to just sort of talk.
But honestly, this happens a lot in these Christmas movies where there's like the idea of Christmas magic, right? It's kind of like there's normal magic, but it's very goal oriented, right? Like he can do just enough to be able to communicate and make the movie watchable, but not enough so that the main character doesn't have to like caretake him a little bit and teach him the ways of the world.
Yeah.
And it's very uneven throughout the movie, where what he knows and what he doesn't know just kind of like makes me want to pull my hair out. But there's a lot of movies where this Christmas magic kind of takes over and drives the character to do something, so it gets to a point. And it's a special kind of thing that happens in these movies, I think.
It is.
I don't know how I feel about it. I like consistency, I want the rules and follow it.
Yeah, but this is perfect because this speaks to like the underlying trope of all Christmas movies, which is effectively to pair a woman who's getting too big for her britches as like a career person and returning her back to whoever, her roots as some caring, nurturing female, and giving them like a partner. And that, that's like what the wish is to achieve that goal always,
One other thing about this scene toward the end, it's a minor thing, but when he is running away from the other people, the old people, and he's running naked, and he turns around and falls into the window, I don't know what kind of window that is, but there is no window I can think of where you could just lean back into it and shatter it into a million pieces and then fall directly on it and not get impaled by glass. Like, there's so much wrong with that one moment that I was like shook for 5 minutes. I was like, I can't, what is this? I guess he's not going to bleed because he's Snow Golem. So
True.
But at some point, he's probably got glass bits lodged in him, so somebody should really take a look at.
Yeah, they just fall out. You know, he melts and the glass just, you know, he leaves water behind, not blood, kind of thing.
Suspicious of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what happens when he melts. There's like shards of glass that are still in him from the first scene.
He has like dog pee in him still or whatever.
The yellow snow.
Wait, how did they miss the yellow snow thing? That would have been really funny. Like a dog comes up and pees on him, and then I guess it's too gross. It's not romantic enough. Okay, so the next scene, I guess it's the next morning. Kathy comes back to work, so we're back at the diner, and she comes across the alive, sexy snowman who stayed in the same place all night. And she was literally going to work, and he's right there. So, like, she just drives up, and he's standing there. And I said, this must be, like, the most lackluster, bound by fate, like, encounter in all of cinematic history. Like, usually when, like, two fated individuals find each other, it's, like, the classic, like,
Oh, I'm late for work and I'm running with coffee, and then you bump into each.
like there's some unexpected element. This was not unexpected at all. It was just like they just walked up to each other. So that was really strange to me.
Must have spent about 6-ish hours out there after he flashed the old lady. And he spent that time talking to the other snowmen that were not alive. Gives you the sense that, like, they're aware?
Oh, it's like a Toy Story sort of deal.
Now I've got questions like, why doesn't he take the scarf and give it to the other snowmen at the end of the movie, or bring all the snowmen to life or something? Like, there's a lot that should happen.
Yeah, a lot of great ideas. Yeah, we could be like a snowman revolution. You know, they're like,
why are we bound in ice and like have to die this horrible death when the sun comes out? Like,
I mean, what they could do is they could make like an army of Frosties for all the horny women in the town, because there's like literally like 20 cougars that are apparently all widows. But that's what they could do.
I think an army of snowmen would end up being like the army of Kens from the Barbie movie, where they're just like all idiots for a while and then they all become super toxic. Like 100%, that's where that ends.
It's true. Yeah.
I was gonna say that, like, I feel like Kathy's now in the know. When she reaches a certain age, she gets like this. It's kind of like friendship bread, but they pass around the scarf. It's like,
here's your boy toy for the season, honey. Get a little cold, you're gonna have some fun, you know. And then
he melts, and then she hands it on to somebody else, you know.
I think I see a fanfic coming on. Okay, so she comes across Ted the sexy snowman. He seems to know nothing about being human, and she's like,
You're so weird, but since I'm so kind-hearted and I love to be a mommy, come into the diner with me.
So she takes him into the diner, and we find out that he's basically a man baby and he doesn't know how to eat. And I said it has undertones of a depressed, overworked, self-made woman taking care of a man baby, and it's so relatable and hilarious. That's what the scene was supposed to be. We cut to the subplot, which I personally thought was very annoying, of the sheriff, just because it was so one note. Like, the humor was so one note. But we're introduced to Daryl from The Office, who is the small town cop who takes his job way too seriously and is constantly being made fun of by the filmmakers for loving his job. He really wants to figure out who the streaker was, who broke into the clothing store, but like, I don't know, the filmmakers just think he's an idiot and they constantly make fun of him. So anyway, he gets called into the clothing store for the break-in, and they find the broken glass, and he's really excited about having a crime in town and wants to figure out who it is. Then we cut back to Ted and Frosty and Kathy. I keep calling them the other names. And he talks about where he came from, and he's like, I'm a snowman, and she like doesn't really accept it, but like isn't really turned off by him being I'm a snowman, kind of just is like,
Okay, I guess that's what you're going with.
So instead of calling the cops and reporting a missing person, Kathy takes Frosty to her doctor friend. And I said the scene plays out like she's taking a child to a pediatrics office, because for some reason I was very confused if she was a real doctor or a child doctor, because the set dressing was like literal like animated things in the back, or whatever, like drawings of illustrations that would be in a kid's office in the background. I didn't know if she was in a school or like what was going on.
I actually did some research. I looked up where this was filmed, and it was filmed mostly up in Ottawa. And the indoor scenes that they did were actually in unused school buildings.
Was this cool?
I think they just didn't redecorate the office for the doctor and just rolled with it. And also, to harp on the doctor thing again, she didn't do anything. She took his temperature twice. Didn't check him for a head wound. Didn't really ask any questions. Nothing. And it just...
Yeah, I mean, and she was oddly predatory. It was really uncomfortable, the way she was like drooling over him and taking advantage of this person who's very clearly not well.
And it took all of, 2 minutes for her to be like, well...
scientifically, I don't want to believe this is true. But it's Christmas, and wouldn't that be cool if it was true?
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, she's like basically like the mentor in a sense that like allows her to continue on her journey, right? Like in the hero's journey arc, right? It's sort of like the meeting of the mentor or whatever. Like, it's sort of like, she is a woman of science, but even she believes in magic, And it's sort of like because of that.
But there's no credibility to it. It's not believable at all.
She's the only doctor in town, Frank. I don't know.
Did she have a stethoscope? She had 2 thermometers.
Oh, I don't know.
I guess that's legit. But she's like,
oh, these must both be broken. Guess he's a snowman. Bye.
Yeah.
She believed in magical thinking and superstition so fast. And the fact that the background looked like they were in a school or a child's office, I thought that it was one of those things that you see in movies of
oh, I've just been shot by a criminal. We can't go to a real hospital. We got to go to the vet.
You know what I mean? That's a trope where they take someone to a lesser doctor because they don't want the authorities to know. So I actually thought this woman was a weird, not a real doctor, and Kathy was intentionally taking him to somebody who didn't have great authority, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe that was me trying to fill in the gaps.
she has to be the small town doctor, right? There's only ever one.
Right.
Yeah, there's only ever one in these movies. It's true. Yeah.
And she had really weird, gigantic flower earrings, which sort of made me think children, pediatrician as well.
Okay, so I also made note here. This is we get our first great meta line from Kathy, where she talks to the child's doctor, and I can't remember the whole back and forth, but Kathy says,
what am I, the Queen of Aldovia?
I liked it at first because it was funny. I didn't expect it, but then I was angry that Netflix feels like that they can just make self-aware jokes and I'll accept the cheesiness. And I was like,
no, I still hate this movie.
I mean, I liked it because I like that, having to watch all of these movies, there's they're forming a Netflix holiday universe going on over there, right? There's all the sequels, the ones that tie into each other a little bit, and they mention each other. And later on, there's reference to another movie that happens in the Netflix universe. So I kind of like that as a side thing to be interested in while we're picking through the trash.
So she takes sexy Frosty back to her house because she's gonna take care of him, I guess. And she shows him television where he uses the TV to learn everything, so they fill in that plot hole. Now he knows everything because he's watching TV. We also learn here too, she has a space heater because the heat in her house isn't working. And so we learn kind of for the first time that, he's bothered by heat. She turns off the space heater. And so now we have a little fear that if it's too warm, that could go bad for Frosty.
She somehow is charged with managing him, right? We don't know why. It smacks of Night Before Christmas for all of you who also enjoyed that movie, where somebody came from medieval times and had to learn about the world through someone's living room and television set. So we get the exact same thing happening in this movie. So a lot of that recycling and sort of building on successful, blueprints from the past.
And then they also had another meta joke here where Kathy, aka Gretchen, sees Lindsay Lohan on TV and is like,
I think I went to high school with that girl.
which I personally enjoyed because, yes, I did grow up on Mean Girls and it was funny because she is Gretchen in my mind. So sorry, but
And that was another Netflix movie they were watching, right? That was Falling for Christmas.
Yeah, that was the other one where she gets amnesia, which we have to review that one. I've watched that movie 3 times for some reason. But.
The question I have now, because I'm thinking about these things, do they have Netflix in the universe where Big Frosty takes place, and that's where they're watching these movies, and they're kind of like us. They're an audience of Netflix.
Well, I believe this takes place in upstate New York, right? Because at the very end, we see a car driving away, and there's actually a New York license plate. Not that that helps any, but I do know that New York exists because in like the Aldovia ones, like isn't the woman who goes to those foreign countries, she's a journalist in New York City. So we at least know that New York exists in that universe. So it's plausible.
Oh, it's just a nice holiday movie to watch. It's the first one this season to kick off. Hot Frosty. What could go wrong? Now I'm like deep in the conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah. So I guess Kathy goes back to the diner again. She's just running back and forth to the diner in like every scene. And then she runs into the dopey sheriff who's looking for the streaking criminal. So the two of them interact, and Kathy realizes that she has to hide sexy Frosty or else he's going to go to prison or jail. Then we cut back to Kathy's house. Frosty is alone and he's learning about the world on TV, and very importantly, he's learning about Dracula lore. I don't know why he learned about Dracula. That was one thing they pointed out. And then he snoops around her house. He discovers that Kathy's husband died of cancer. They had like a sheet and it had some like, I don't know what it was, but it looked like it was in Comic Sans font. Did you notice that? I was like, why did they choose that font for the official record? Cancer Records and Comic Sans. It wasn't actually Comic Sans, but it looked like it. So anyway, we learned about that. Frosty knows about that. He feels empathy towards her. So Kathy comes home from work. Her and Frosty have kind of like a heartfelt evening, basically. There's like a few things that happen. They talk about her dead husband. They talk about him avoiding the law. And then they make a bunch of pizza together. But there was a wonderful tropey moment where like they're cooking pizza, and I think they both go to touch the pizza cutter at the same time, and their fingers brush, and it's like, and I was like, it was so cheesy that like I felt like everybody was laughing at it, and it was intentionally cheesy, so whatever, but it was still good.
He just learned what pizza was and how to cook pizza and what vampires are and everything, but like at what point in there did he learn that
like, oh, touching a female's hand like that is awkward and you should be shy? Like, what?
Maybe he learned it from Dracula on TV.
This other thing I was going to mention too, so when she comes home and he's like downstairs looking for Christmas decorations or whatever, she's like coming in and looking around the house, and all I could think of is like, I feel like she's like coming home and looking for her pet. Like, oh, where are they? What did they get into? Like, I have to make sure that like they didn't destroy something. And again, it just reinforces that sort of like odd dynamic between the two of them. When they were having conversations before, I think the hand touch, there's a few things that came up, right? She was basically saying to him,
don't go back into town and get caught by the cops or the sheriff. You have to, you're on his radar.
And he was like,
I'm on his radar?
But this is, I think, when we were watching Frank, we kind of came up with like, there's like two things that we could think about with him. One is that, it's the beautiful idiot trope, but also he's a snowman savant. So like, there's like some things that he can just do. Like he can make pizzas just watching it on TV. Anyway,
they have to do that, right? Because he starts off like a clean slate, right? He can barely do anything. He knows to put clothes on, that's it. If that doesn't progress fast enough over like the 3 days or 4 days that this movie takes place, the ending is even creepier because he's full on still 3-4 day old man child.
Yeah, I mean, well, he has like multiple levels of development happening, right? So he has like physical, he comes in, he's already perfect adult, right? And then there's the intellectual piece, but then the emotional piece, he only gets as far as middle school by the end of the show. So it's like still kind of problematic.
I do wonder with this movie, and I was going to look and see, is there a movie similar to this in concept where the genders are reversed, where there's like, I was thinking there's like The Mermaid, right, with Tom Hanks back in the day, but that still is not quite the same thing. It's not like a new 3-day-old creature that somebody falls in love with. There must be something, and I just can't think of anything with the main character's gender swaps. It would be awful.
Agreed.
So then nighttime, and then it's the next morning. Kathy goes to work again, and Ted, being the brainless eye candy that he is, or, oh my god, Frosty, and that's Ted! I keep doing this! Sorry. Frosty, being the brainless eye candy that he is, and does what all good men do. He puts on a work belt and starts fixing Kathy's house, because he learned it on TV. While he works, a random cougar in town is driving by the house, and she crashes her car in a snowbank because she sees Hot Frosty repairing the house without a shirt, and it makes her so horny that she can't drive. And then Frosty, once again, being the altruistic, brainless idiot meat man, helps her push her car out of the snowbank, and the cougar feels like Frosty pushing her car is akin to him banging her. So we have that scene, which is great. And then basically she invites him to come to her house to like do chores and fix light bulbs and whatever, so she can like continue to objectify him. So I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about that scene.
Yes. Some of the quotes from that scene.
Want me to get behind you and push? You ready for it?
And then, if the girls could see me now. And then,
I'm out of breath.
Oh my god. Yeah.
This scene made me wonder who this movie is for. This is not a family movie or like a kid's movie. Like, it was very confusing.
I know, I felt like that it was so self-aware, but it wasn't quite cringe because it was so self-aware. Like, it was meant to be funny and like just constant innuendos, so it almost feels like you can't even make fun of it because that was the point. But like it gets to the point where it's not cringe, it turns into just eye roll. So whatever. I didn't particularly enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so uncomfortable the way that they have him behaving like a child throughout the whole thing. And then like they're much older women, and it's not really cute in that sense. It's really off-putting. So
it's just another one of those thirsty Hope Springs ladies. But still, it's just this whole town is like lusting over this snow child.
Simple-minded snowman savant.
Okay, Frosty finishes all of the home repairs and all of the cougars love it, and then they, for some reason, decide to drop him off at Kathy's diner altogether. They all get into a convertible. Yeah, in the winter. They all get into a convertible in the winter and drop him off at Kathy's diner. And then while he's at the diner, this is where Frosty meets the sheriff for the first time. Nothing of note happens other than that the sheriff is continuing to be inadequate in his doofiness and is now suspicious that Frosty is the streaker.
Those are my least favorite scenes throughout the entire movie. Like, I like those actors, but it was just so painful to watch.
I'm glad you felt the same way. I was like, I like spaced out in all of them.
Yeah, it's just like you said, it's flat. It's one note. It's just sort of like the same. Oh, they're just trying to find the bad guy, singing a song. I mean, the song was funny. I liked it, but you know.
Kathy and Jack leave the diner. Kathy's a little bit upset that Jack has been wandering around town because she wants him to stay off the radar. Frosty tells Kathy that he wants to help out at the local high school because he's altruistic and childlike, apparently. Kathy thinks it's a bad idea, but ultimately lets him go. I guess he wants to help build like sets or props for the upcoming winter homecoming ball. I don't know what it is, but some sort of dance that's happening. So then when they return home, Kathy sees that Frosty has fixed all of the broken aspects of her home, and she starts to feel fond of him, and then she approves of him going to help at the high school.
There's so many elements here of this terrible dynamic that's being set up between Kathy and Jack. She goes to like pick him up at the school. He's like high-fiving the kids. They're all like, he doesn't get sarcasm. She's like, oh, you're gonna say, hi to her cousin or no.
He's like, oh, if they're nice,
So he's still so sweet and naive. They go back into the house and he goes into his room and like slams the door because he's mad at mom and he's like sulking, and then like goes in and she like looks up and she's like, wait.
She's like, how come there's no water dripping into the bucket that's not here anymore?
And then she's like, walks up the stairs and she sees all that, and that's when she goes down and is like,
okay, you're no longer grounded. You can go and be a handy person for this school.
And he's basically like,
thanks, Mom. I get to go out.
Like, it's that attitude. It's just like so
uncomfortable because they're
supposed to be developing a sexual like chemistry. It just doesn't work. It's so icky.
The whole son thing starts from the very beginning when she puts the scarf around him, and then he's like, oh, like you did this, like you made me into whatever.
You made me. You birthed me.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next day she drops him off at the high school, and then we have our spirited montage, another trope bingo card thing, where he's building the Christmas set for the dance, and then they also chop in like him and her like living together. Like, I guess you're supposed to assume it's like a week or something. So he's like getting her a Christmas tree, decorating the house, like imbuing her with the spirit of Christmas, because I guess for some reason snowmen have inherent knowledge about Christmas is what we're meant to assume.
Magic.
Yeah, magic. I don't know. And so then once the montage ends, we see Kathy picking Frosty up from school when he's done building his set. Like Lisa said, emphasizing how childlike he is and how much of a mother she is. So then once they're in the car and he becomes her therapist in that moment, and she tells Frosty that she's not ready for love because she's still hurting from her dead husband. And then he gives her like a whole bunch of words of affirmation and saying how great she is. So then when they're driving home, he becomes a child once again, and he's altruistic and brainless, and he's like,
Oh, mommy, look, there's that store that I broke the glass for, and da-da-da.
So he jumps out of the car, and basically he feels bad that he broke into that store, and he wants to make it right by replacing their glass.
I was going to say that at the beginning of all this, you mentioned there's the montage, right? So this goes back to the bingo card. There's like a few options here, right? We have the spirited montage. There's actually a collaborative cooking scene in here, but I think we need to make the argument that it is not enough of its own collaborative cooking scene to count, so it needs to be a spirited montage. And I think that this show actually has 2 spirited montages, and there's one later. So I would say that if you had to have one, this could be a pretty good representative of the film to go with this as your bingo card. The other thing is that like at the end of the spirited montage, I think like they're in like some scene, they're looking at the Christmas decor or something, and then like he exits the scene, and there's this really weird camera angle where like we see Kathy's face, and she's like facing the camera, and she's just like staring at him for like an excessive long like period of time that it's like uncomfortable, because in that moment it's sort of, I think this is another one of our trope bingo squares. It's sort of like knowing looks tell all, right? But anyway, just to mark it, that's like a potential sort of like looks tell all, you know what I mean? I think it's one of the bingo squares as well. And then, another sort of Christmas reference, I think this comes from Mel. So after that, she's gone into the space he's gone back into the space where he broke the glass, and he's apologizing. And I think it's Mel that says, nobody can be mad at Christmas, right? So it's sort of like, oh, it's fine. You can just smash our stuff and steal our things, and we just don't care because it's Christmas.
So they drive back home, and then Frosty has, like Lisa said, the childlike idea to invite Kathy to the high school dance. And then he actually goes to the sheriff's office, and he asks one of the cops, like the sidekick cop, for some advice about how to kiss and dance with a woman. I don't know why he decided the cops are like a good person to talk to, but the whole scene is actually just like the 2 of them building each other up and like 2 men giving each other compliments. Yeah, and then I said it made me wonder if like there'll be fanfics written about Frosty the Snowman and the cop like hooking up instead.
Mhm.
That's just my personal fantasy.
I don't know why he asked the cop.
Okay, so I think this is where it is referencing the Nutcracker in a sense, right? So, you know, in like the traditional Nutcracker, the Nutcracker comes to life, and like Clara goes with the Nutcracker, and the Nutcracker is kind of like this like prince that dances around and like takes care of her and like fights the Rat King. So he comes to life solely for Clara and Clara's experience. And I think that that's like what's happening here. If we assume it's not a conspiracy, it's that he came to life specifically with the purpose to evolve into her sexy hunk new beau. And like, he's like,
I love you. And
she's like,
That's not real. And he's like,
no, I do, because that's just part of the magic. And
he came to life for her. So that's my theory. And so like he's had,
It would make sense if you put the magical item around somebody and cast the spell with your phone. The phone doesn't go like this. And it's it comes for you, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. It's just a fantasy come to life, 100%.
I mean, it's 100%. Yeah, it's definitely a fantasy. He never does anything wrong the entire movie. Even for a child, that's unbelievable to think of. Like, it's just like, you know, they get to the end or whatever, and they say,
Only a man that sweet must have been created by magic or something, right?
Yes.
he's a 10. He gets along with everybody in the town. Everybody thinks he's great. He loves you immediately. It's very
prominent nipples.
Fantasy-like. Yeah, we all know what his nipples look like. And I do wonder about, it's a good thing that Christmas Magic gave him legs, because that bottom part of the sculpture was not done. So this could have been like a totally different movie. If it was like a 10 from the waist up and just like a slug on the bottom half.
Yeah, like a weird tumor on the bottom.
Yeah. Why didn't you finish the sculpture?
I said here, now that he's spoken to the cop about kissing a woman. He goes home and asks Kathy to dance. She says yes, and she completely ignores how weird and creepy it is for two 40-year-olds to show up at a kid's dance and join in. Do they assume that, like, I don't know, middle-aged millennial women all, like, fantasize about going to their old high school dance? Like, why is this something we want?
I don't know either. It's really icky. I mean, I feel like they could have gone a different way, and he could have like come out not as a child in this movie, and it would have worked just as well. And they could have had him go to like some sort of like winter formal that the town puts on. You know what I mean? Like, why the child element? Like, it just made it just so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, it's so. I wrote, this is so damn weird. Kathy the boy mom. Like, she has those like boy mom vibes.
It's like really icky.
But after this, we get another spirited montage where it's like the Pretty Woman song, and they're like throwing clothes through the air and dressing him up, and he's just
Looks good in everything, so it's just so fun. Oh my god, isn't he amazing? Look at my boy.
So it's nighttime, and it's like a weird scene from prom where Frosty gives Kathy a snowflake necklace with the money that he stole from Kathy. He bought it. Further emphasizing again
How much of a child he is.
and obviously because Kathy is out of her mind, she loves it. And he's like,
It's really expensive.
and she's like,
I don't care.
If this was reversed, right? If this was a gender swap, and the woman was spending his money without realizing it and buying all these expensive things, you'd have the feeling it was like a gold digging operation or something.
Yes.
Right? So it makes me wonder how well Kathy's Cafe is really doing over there in Hope Springs.
well, not good, because she didn't even have $2,000 in her savings to bail him out of jail. Okay, so anyway, next scene. They go to the dance and they dance, and there's like a long scene of them like doing some coordinated dance. It doesn't matter, I don't care about it. But unfortunately, as they're dancing, Frosty gets really hot as he inappropriately dances among the sweaty teenagers. Because they're all dancing together, and so Kathy's like,
Wow, you look really hot and sweaty. We should go outside and cool off.
so they go outside, just the two of them, where they have kind of like, you know, the pinnacle scene where they admit their feelings to one another, and then they have an interrupted kiss. So I marked this one as a potential trope, because they weren't really interrupted, like he pulls away, but it still felt the same way where they're about to kiss and then they stop.
It was kind of interrupted for us, I think, to watch.
Yes.
Whereas, like, you know, a lot of times somebody will burst on the scene and be like, oh, and, you know, interrupt them that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I felt the same way where I was like, I don't know if this counts as an interrupted.
Yeah.
I said it gets an honorable mention, but I didn't count it as a full trope.
I was going to say at the dance, a couple of things that I noticed that I thought was funny. The kids dancing during the slow dance were all as far away as possible from each other.
Were they?
Arms fully extended. It was like plenty of room for Jesus in there. It was great. He convinces, you know, the sheriff's son. He's like, oh, I don't know how to dance with another person. He's like,
Come out with me at the same time, and I'll show you. You know, we can do it together. We can learn together.
Oh yeah.
does absolutely nothing. He's like, yeah, go. I have a lot of anxiety around dancing, so that would have really made me very upset if somebody did that to me. As a kid, I wouldn't have, I'd be like, no, dude, I'm not going to dance just because you're going to show me how to do it. Like, no.
Well, if only you had a Frosty wingman.
No thanks. Pets.
Yeah.
Go dance with your mom. Leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I had a few thoughts on like the scene that we were just talking about. So one, the interrupted kiss. I feel like what they were trying to do is like turn this trope on its head. They were like actively trying to turn it around because, you know, this is one of these scenes that you see all the time and again. And this was the element where we're like, oh, oddly, Frosty is aware enough to understand that he could have an impact on her heart. And this is why in the beginning, when I described him as basically being this naive individual untouched by toxic masculinity, he doesn't take advantage of her. He doesn't want to take advantage of her. He has this child, like, I'm going to take care of you, mom, kind of element. So in that case, I think it should actually kind of count because they're trying to rewrite it. I don't know that it was like successful. I feel like what we also need to say is that the reason why they didn't kiss is obviously because it would have immediately turned him into a human.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I wonder.
I mean,
It's true. I mean, I don't know if we want to jump ahead to that, but it was how he turns into a human. I was a little confusing to me. Like, what was what brought him to life Like, we're not sure if it was the scarf or the wish or the photograph or what. I felt a little similarly about the kiss. Like, what? Wait, so this was like a Pinocchio real boy story the whole time? I was like...
This was actually a Little Mermaid story, because what if he went to the Snow Queen and was like,
I want to be a real boy.
And the Snow Queen made a deal and was like,
I'm going to take your self-awareness and your intelligence, and you somehow have to fall in love with this woman.
and then like there's that, like, basically that scene at the dance is the equivalent of Kiss the Girl. La, 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 la. And anyway, they don't make it, and because they're trying to be thwarted. So that's my conspiracy theory.
I don't know. Maybe he's just trying to build up tension for it. I mean...
So the conclusion at the dance, after they have their little heartfelt interrupted kiss, is that Frosty says,
I won't kiss you and I won't be with you because I'm gonna melt soon.
I don't know how he knows that, but he basically says, I'm gonna
melt soon, and since you've already lost a husband, I don't want to do that to you again.
Okay. Oh, we see the doofus sheriff again, like walking around town, and we've discovered that he's got a lead on the investigation. He's found some surveillance footage of Frosty streaking, and he's now able to prove that Frosty was the streaker, and so now with that proof, he can arrest him. Either way, it's Christmas Eve now, and Kathy is throwing like a big party for the whole town at her diner, so like the whole town is there. Things are really good, but the sheriff shows up again, and then he arrests Frosty, basically. Frosty gets dragged away, and the whole town is like pretty upset that Frosty's getting dragged away, and then like Kathy reveals in this moment like, oh, he's a snowman, and like obviously the whole town just immediately accepts it. Again, they tried to be a little bit self-aware with it, but like literally everyone's like, it's Christmas, and they like all accept that he's a snowman.
And we haven't seen him interact with any of those other people, right? Outside of like the kids at school and the thirsty old ladies. Like, why would they believe he's a snowman?
I was gonna say the doctor is the one who I think kind of chimes in again. Like, she's the one who leads the charge and sort of like wins the hearts and minds of the rest of the town. They're all just chime in after her that he's a snowman, so.
Oh, of course they're gonna believe the doctor.
Daryl, the sheriff, drags Frosty away to a jail cell. And then he locks him up, and I guess like the drama here is that the sheriff's office is really hot for some reason. The thermostat is like up to 80. I don't remember. They showed it. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's just hot in there. And he starts melting and getting really drippy. And the sheriff conveniently at this moment is like,
you're a sleeper agent.
Kathy and the town rush to the jail to save Frosty because they're all like,
He's a magical snowman, we want to save him, and the sheriff is an asshole.
Sheriff is like,
oh, you know, I don't really want to let him out of jail, so I'm going to set the bond really high at $2,000,
which is supposed to be a lot for them, I guess. I don't know. And so the idea is Kathy can't afford it, so she tells the town, oh, I'll never be able to save him, and he's going to melt in there. And so the whole town binds together, and they pool their money, and they all come up with $2,000 to bail him out of jail. And so this act of selflessness, and I called it collective delusion, because that could be what it is if he's not a real snowman, seems to move the sheriff, and he says,
okay, I'll let Frosty go, and I won't take any of your money. You're right, it's Christmas. Da, 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 da.
So then they rush in to let him out of the jail cell, but he's like super melted, which just means like they just douse the actor in water, because there was no real melting. And so then they take him outside, they drop him in the snow in order to like reconstitute him somehow. But after like a few moments, he doesn't wake up, and the town is like, he's dead, Kathy, let him go. And they like put a hand on her shoulder, and they're like, let's walk away, Kathy, which was really weird to me. Like the weird doctor was like, Kathy, it's time to go, girl. So they're just gonna like leave him dead on the sidewalk, and as she's walking away, he like pops up and he's like,
Kathy,
or something, and then they embrace, and the whole town is like surrounding them as they kiss. I don't know if they're clapping, but in my mind it felt like they were clapping as they kiss. And then in this moment as they kiss, I guess it's like a moment of true love, and we learn that the snowman has been turned into a real boy because he's
like, I'm cold.
And she's like,
oh wow, it must mean that you're human now.
And that's pretty much it.
Why wasn't there a magical transition when he turned human? The doctor only took a temperature, right? So we don't know if he ever had a pulse. My guess is no. Probably not, right? So it felt rushed and felt a little low budget there at the end.
It did.
Some kind of a light, or maybe the magic noise, or something happened to signify that there was a change other than now I'm cold.
This would have been a good moment for like his scarf to fall off, and they would have been like, oh no, without the scarf you can't be a real snowman. But then he lives without the scarf, and they would have realized.
So disturbing that they just like dumped his body on the side of the road and then just like left him there, and they're like, look away and just leave. Like what?
Yeah, and they're like,
Walk away, Kathy.
So can I tell you my theory now? Now that we're talking about the cult thing. I think there's a chance that this is all a conspiracy by the members of the town to set her up with somebody. So the way that they react throughout the movie doesn't make any sense at all, right? Except for the sheriff. The sheriff's the only one, and it's like, okay, it makes a little sense, because I don't think they told him. They know he overreacts, so they don't tell him, right? So
I can see this.
and the doctor coordinate for this to happen, right? The only way we know that he's a snowman is because of the scene we saw, right, where allegedly he turns into a person. Other than that, he's just a cold person who sweats a lot. There's nothing else, right? He's very nice. He acts stupid. He doesn't know a lot, and all the ladies love him. And then at the end, everybody's like trying to save him, and like trying to save him from the sheriff who doesn't know what's going on. And then miraculously, he's okay and he's back to being human. And it's like, this feels like a setup. Like there's just too many things in here that don't make sense, and it feels like the second one would just be the town confesses the truth, and then there's a big scandal about Snowman. So that's my theory, is that it's all fake, and the town was just trying to get her set up with some guy.
Yeah, no, when you say that, I'm like, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Like, why does some part of me want to actually believe in Christmas magic? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, 100%. He was like an actor, and they're all just gaslighting her.
Exactly. Like, the scene with the doctor, and she very quickly comes to terms with the fact that this person might be a snowman.
I have no obligation to try and help him anymore. Just take him home with you.
What? The dude's delusional.
Yeah.
There's no doctor that would just say,
Okay, this person's like clearly out of their mind. Go ahead and take him home. No need to come back for a follow-up or anything. Don't take him to the hospital. It's fine.
like that to me makes me think that the doctor, if this is a whole conspiracy, she was like totally behind it.
Totally in it, yeah.
Or she's the one that sculpted Frosty in the first place. And so she knew that like this is actually, I created him. She could have said that, but she didn't. Because otherwise we have no idea who sculpted Frosty. It's never answered. Yeah. We also don't know who wins the snow sculpture, which is a minor pet peeve. But nobody's confessing to it. Like, how many people in that town can make a snow sculpture with individual fingers that hold their shape like that and put nipples on it?
And nipples, yeah. That was the most impressive part, the nipples. It's true. So then like Daryl, the sheriff, is like similar to Hot Fuzz. Have you seen Hot Fuzz?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Right? He's the only one that doesn't know, and the whole town is in on it, and he feels crazy.
And like the whole arc of the movie is actually about him, because he's the one who comes to a change of heart, and it's because he's now in on it as well. The other way you could spin this is to take a Shutter Island approach, and actually they're playing along with her delusion. And they're like,
yes, we all think he's a snowman, Kathy. Yes.
You know, like, and it's all in her head. And they're just like, okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that we should make 2 short films then that are like from alternate perspectives. Like one being like Kathy is a mental patient and this is all in her head, and the other one is like this town is way too involved and they like screw her up. And we're gonna pitch this to Netflix, so nobody take this idea.
Yeah, we got our sequel at least with these. Right.
Because in all of these movies, the love interest always has to win over more than just the main character, right? It has to win over the family or the friends or the neighbors or the whole town, right? In this case. And so they say very quickly, like,
oh, you know, this school just recently lost their entire maintenance staff or something.
It's like, okay, there's a throwaway line that the entire
yeah.
And now there's like this opening for you know, Ted or whatever to get in there and win over all these kids and be useful and set up this romantic end scene thing. It still feels like it's all very coordinated, right? I know it's a plot, but it also feels like some of the people in town could have gotten together and like figured this all out. Because if they hired somebody, right? Forget the whole snowman thing. They hired this model to come in, act like an idiot, Turns out he's got some handyman skills and he can fix up her place, because I thought they should have gotten her a handyman someone. It was 2 years since her house is falling apart. Maybe they do, and they decide to combine it with a love interest, right? And it's like, it's a man, at the very least, she gets her house fixed up, right? Maybe the old ladies are in on it, and they're just like,
You know what? This guy can fix stuff and he looks good.
they bring him in, and then they set him up with his job at the school. It feels very much like this all ties together very neatly, and it's making me a little more suspicious.
Yeah. Well, they definitely repaying him under the table. He doesn't even have an identity, so I mean.
Yeah, there's no last name. There's no social security number.
I mean, I think in that case that Daryl the sheriff is right. He is a sleeper agent. Because that's the theory. That's what I said. In the end, the sheriff turns into a conspiracy theorist, basically. But maybe you're converting me, Frank.
You're converting me, Frank.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get in the trash.
So there's a quote that I had written down, and I don't know if this happened like around this time, but it's Kathy, and she says,
I know you didn't ask to come alive, but I didn't ask to care either.
it's ridiculous. So she.
Don't you feel like that's like something a toxic mother would say to their child?
Yeah.
Like a child that's like, you're a bad mother! And then that's what she retorts with.
Yeah, exactly. And also, maybe he did want to come alive. I mean, who knows, right? Like, I just don't understand what the value was of making him that childlike. I just don't feel like because they get the same payoff in Night Before Christmas when he just doesn't know the world and like he's new and like he could just be like a fantastic person. Like, I was thinking the person who sculpted him must have sculpted him with the intention of making him a middle school boy, because that's like what he became. That's what he was, like, you know? Yeah. Like, he was literally created to be the love interest in somebody's life. He has zero agency and he's just supposed to be happy, just like being there for her and being, that's a little uncomfortable. So,
well, actually, that's a perfect segue into the subject. Like, now that we basically got to the end of the movie about male objectification. I mean, I think like what you're basically saying, Lisa, is almost the definition of objectification, especially in terms of creating characters in films and movie and TV and whatnot. I feel like the idea that there is a character literally created just for the gratification of another one, like this is the epitome of that. But the strange thing is it was a male this time. Like, we're so used to female objectification, but this time they made it a male. And like Frank said, who is this movie for? Is it for middle-aged women? Like, is it a family movie? Like, it's different. It doesn't necessarily make it better in my mind. Like, objectification is always kind of icky, even though they tried to make it a joke in this. But it's just, I don't know, interesting.
Yeah. It has like the feeling also of being like,
well, we're gonna just make it even because normally we objectify women, so let's also objectify men too.
But that doesn't make it any better. Like,
agreed. Yeah. I actually like read a little bit that the actor who played Frosty, Dustin, in an interview, they asked him that basically, like, how do you feel about the male objectification? And he said, quote, it was incredibly uncomfortable. And he said that he knew going into it he was going to be very uncomfortable, and he actually felt that like his co-star Kathy Lacey, who played the co-star, like helped him feel safer on set. But it seemed like overall he didn't particularly like it.
That's icky. I mean, his body is the subject of the entire film, you know. I guess, what are your final thoughts on like this movie in terms of like, I mean, obviously it was a success, but like because it made fun of itself. And it's so ridiculous that everybody wanted to see it. And it's just sort of like cashing in on holiday tropes at this point. Because it didn't have that same Hallmark feeling, that authentic lack of self-awareness, like trying to actually create a fantastical world. I think using, the deputy and the sheriff characters and those actors being comedic actors, like brought that level of like goofy self-awareness that you don't see often in these movies. And it kind of broke the fourth wall, quite a bit too.
I attributed that to it being part of the Netflix universe. If you watch like a Christmas movie from like 2006, like it's not like a made for TV, it doesn't feel at all that way. And I feel like Netflix kind of has its own style and type of humor. I mean, it's meant to be like a throwaway movie, right? Like a cash grab, I assume.
It just felt like it was just there to hit the notes. And then mix in this incredibly uncomfortable, like like theme of like adult child relationship, which is so disgusting. I feel like I don't know how it got approved, like, you know, like
Christmas magic.
Well, in terms of what makes this like trash, I think it's just the writing, you know, and the tropes, the over-reliance on the holiday tropes. It's just so simple. But I think what makes it a good trashy holiday movie is the fact that there is a snowman that comes to life. Just there it is, right? That's the premise of the whole film. And then this like, yeah. So, and I think for me, it would be like one that I would recommend if it didn't involve him being involved at a middle school. Like, I just think that was the fatal flaw for this film. And like, if he had come in like more mature and there were other ways that he got involved in the town and like helped out, like, I don't know, volunteering somewhere at a library, at a soup kitchen, doing something like the local church, like anything, like that would be so much more redeemable to me as like part of the plot. But I think I would say because of that and because of the objectification, I would have to give it like a score of ho ho horrible.
I don't understand why kids were in this movie to begin with. Like, you could have easily done something other than the kid thing, unless you wanted to show that he was learning how to exist in the world like a kid. Like, it just made that more glaring as the
This was the tagline in IMDb. It said, "Widow Kathy magically brings a snowman to life. His innocence helps her heal and find love again." And so I feel like that perfectly encapsulates every critique that we're talking about, because I said, why would his innocence heal her? But like for her, why wouldn't that feel like a burden and not like it's somebody else to take care of? She, like, her house is in disrepair. She has like 1,000 things to do and she's like mentally neglecting herself. Why did he heal her and not just add to her plate of things that need to be taken care of?
That's a really good point. Like, if we knew something about her backstory or her past relationship, or even anything more about her that would explain why that was such an essential piece of her healing. Well, let's take a look at the bingo card and see what we got. Okay. So, there's like a few that we mentioned. I mean, I'll mention just maybe a couple to start. Eye candy before sparks. That's like a big part of it, at least in terms of Kathy, right? She sees him, she objectifies him. Everybody sees him and objectifies him, so that's an easy one. And then the interrupted kiss was an honorable mention that we described, and then of course the magical item or event with the scarf. So those are the ones that sort of like rose to the top for me.
I ordered mine in terms of like best to worst. So these are the ones that showed up. I said the quirky best friend, like the weird child doctor woman, whatever she was, the doctor, like it kind of implied that she was a close friend of Kathy's. Wasn't quite a best friend, but like it had hints of being, oh, she's quirky and weird and that's why she believes in snowman and it was close. So that goes under an honorable mention. I said that we talked about the Christmas wish thing where like her putting the scarf in him almost felt like she was making a wish, but it wasn't quite. And then the snowflake necklace felt very close to a meaningful ornament. It wasn't quite an ornament, but it was close. So those all went under honorable mention for me. And then we talked about the ones that were definite tropes was the collaborative cooking scenes. That's on the bingo card too. And there was like 2 or 3 of those. Spirited montages. There was multiple ones of those. Interrupted kiss, like you said. Whirlwind romance is another one in the bingo card too. And the whole thing is a whirlwind. They constantly say, oh, I've known you for 3 days and I'm in love with you. And then excessive holiday decor. Even though like all of these movies have that, this like when Frosty Snowman came in and like set up her Christmas tree, it was like a massive Christmas tree and there was just all over her house. So I was like, that counts. And then the small town charm. So those are all the tropes too. But then I said for like the end of like which one is this one really gonna count, it was like you said, Lisa, the magical item, because it was all surrounding the scarf, or the eye candy before sparks. Those are the 2 that I put aside that I feel like this movie really exemplifies. So for me personally, I feel like that this movie, even though the whole plot is surrounding the scarf bringing him to life, like every scene is like, look at his body, he's so hot. Oh, he's like a sexy man child. Like, so for me, I feel like we have to do the eye candy before sparks personally.
I would agree. I would say eye candy before sparks as well.
I would agree too. And if it wasn't for the magical jingle sound when the scarf made an appearance, I don't know that I still believe that the scarf actually did anything.
I like your skepticism in this. We need someone who's very skeptical in a world of Christmas magic.
All right, so would you recommend somebody watch this film if they're looking for a good holiday watch?
I think so. I wouldn't say that like it is the ultimate Christmas movie, but like the premise of just this is a sexy Frosty the Snowman, like just the concept is brain rotting, like within itself. So because of that, I would say sure. It's trash.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth watching just to see what you make of it.
Yeah, I'd say this is good trash pickings. This is great. You get to see a lot of good acting, relatively speaking, within the realm of holiday films. There's a lot of favorites. You get to see some actors that you'll for sure recognize. And it's certainly great to have on in the background if you're doing something else and you can follow along. The plot points are clear as day. So great one to help set the holiday tone.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when I'm assessing trash, like it needs to be nonsensical to the point where it feels like everyone on set was like drunk, like making the movie. Like this movie made too much sense. Like it's a little too professional for me, you know, so.
Thanks for picking trash with us, and stick around because we're going to be watching a ton more over the holiday season, and we look forward to picking it all apart with you.
Yeah. Good job, everybody.